Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Uh, Welcome, students, to the Islamic finance class. Uh, we completed 8 weeks of classes before the midterm exam. Ninth was supposed to be our midterm exam, which was cancelled because of the uh, spread of coronavirus. And this is our first lecture after the midterm exam. Now, because of the current situation where we are facing this problem of lockdown, we have to shift to this mode of online lecturing. So, I'll be sharing with you the lectures for each week online and go through the contents, listen to the lectures carefully, make your notes, and make your points. If any point is not clear to you, or if there is any ambiguity, you can email me, you can contact me using WhatsApp, and I will help you. I'll try to clarify the problems, whatever problems you are facing in understanding any of the concept. So let's start with this first lecture after the midterm exam. So we consider it to be week number 10. So today's lecture is about Ijarah or leasing. Ijarah is mostly used in Islamic banking for car leasing. It is also used in home financing as well. Um, uh, Once you complete this lecture and go along with the slides, listen to the audio, hopefully you will be able to understand the concept of Ijarah in Islam. I'll also discuss some of the basic rules of Ijarah, which are defined in Islamic Shariah. So these are the two main objectives that will be covered. In the end, I'll be making a comparison of the concept of leasing. Uh, how is it the concept of leasing is different from the Islamic concept of Ijara? So we'll cover some of the differences between the two as well. Okay, so let's start with the definition of Ijara. Ijara is to give something on rent. So basically, whenever you have some asset and you are allowing someone to use that asset for a specific period of time, and then you decide some rent against that asset, that is the basic concept of ijara. So basically, you are charging rent and you are providing the other party the right of using that asset. So ownership of the asset is retained by you, whereas you are just offering, or you are just allowing the other party to use that asset. As far as Islamic Sharia is concerned, we find two types of ijara there. One is ijara of services, and the other is ijara of assets and property. What is ijara of services? When a person employs another person against wages. We see these type of contracts where people are working for other people. Now they are working as employees, and you make a contract of employment in which you define the terms of employment as well as the entitlements, different privileges, different pays, the pay and privileges that the employee will be getting. So this contract is basically also a contract of ijara, which is ijara of services. Here, the employer is called mustajir, whereas the employee is ajir, and the wages that are paid to the employee are called ujra. Example of this can be A has employed B in his office as a manager on a monthly salary. So obviously, once A has employed B, he made a contract, and in that contract, he specified that what will be the monthly salary and as well as what will be the duties of B. So that contract will contain all the terms and conditions of the contract. Now, the second type of ijara is ijara of assets and property. Here, uh, when a person transfers the usufruct, now this usufruct is basically the right of using an asset of a particular asset property to another person in exchange of rent. Here you can see that in this contract, the things which are important is that a person is uh, offering his asset to another person, offering him to use for a particular period against a particular rent. So this is ijara of assets or property. Here we have two parties. One is lessor. Lessor is the owner of the asset. So the owner of asset who is offering his asset to the other party is called lessor. He's also known as mujir in Arabic. The person who is getting the asset on rent is called lessee, and he's also known as mustajir in Arabic. The rent which is there in this contract is called ujra. Okay, now let's move on to the basic rules of leasing or ijara. Here we are covering ijara from an Islamic perspective. So we'll be discussing the rules which are defined for ijara of assets in Islamic Sharia. Those rules will be discussed here. The first rule is a lease transaction is always governed by the rules of Sharia prescribed for ijara. So, as I told you earlier, that Islamic banks are offering different assets, which include automobiles, home, house financing. So, they are making the contract of ijara, and the rules which are covered there are we'll be discussing some of them here in this lecture. Now, leasing is a contract to transfer the usufruct of an asset by its owner to another person for an agreed period at an agreed consideration. Leasing is a contract to transfer the usufruct of an asset. Usufruct, I already explained in the previous slide, it is right of usage. So the owner of the asset is transferring the right of usage to another person. This so the owner of the asset is lessor, and the other person who is getting this lesser asset on rent is called lessee for an agreed period. So in a contract of ijara, the time period should be well defined at an agreed consideration as well as the rent. So a contract of the requirement for a contract of ijara is that you need to define the time period as well as you need to define the rent for the entire period. So if any of these two is missing from the contract, that contract will be invalid contract. For example, if you have not defined the time period, then the contract will be invalid, or if you have not defined the rent for the entire period, even then the contract will be considered to be invalid. The subject of lease must have a valuable use. Therefore, things having no usufruct cannot be leased. Okay, so again here we are mentioning that uh, those things can be given on lease which have some value, which have some utility. If anything has no utility or no value, obviously the other party will not be ready to pay for it. The lessee will only be interested in getting an asset if he consider it to be valuable, or if it fulfill any of his need. Then this contract will be made for ijara. Consumable items cannot be leased. For example, money, eatables, fuel, ammunition, etc. Obviously, if you are giving consumable asset to another person, and if he consumes it, so that is the asset is no more available, in that case this contract will not be a contract of ijara. Rather, you can sell that asset. As the corpus of leased property remains in the ownership of the lessor. Now, this corpus of leased property means the ownership of the leased property is with the lessor. All the liabilities emerging from the ownership shall be borne by the lessor. Here, there's a little typo here. You can just change this. It is not lessee, it is lessor. So the ownership, since the ownership of the asset is with the lessor, all the ownership related liabilities are the responsibility of the lessor. Example: A has leased his house to B. Paying of property tax shall be the responsibility of A. Right? A is the lessor, A is the owner. So A has leased his house to B. B is the lessee. Paying of property tax. This property tax is ownership related liability. So this should be paid by A, who's the lessor. Whereas payment of electricity bills shall be the responsibility of B. Now, payment of electricity bill is related to usage. Usage related liabilities will be responsibility of lessee. So this is another rule of ijara. Lease agreement is always for a well defined period. So I have already mentioned this thing, that once you are making a contract, you have to define the time period, otherwise this contract will be an invalid contract. The lessee cannot use the leased asset for any purpose other than the purpose specified in the lease agreement. Now, this is an important condition that in a contract of Ijarah, the purpose of usage can be defined. For example, if you have a house and you are giving that house to another person on rent, so once you are making contract for that, you can specify that this house is being rented for residential purpose. The lessee cannot use it for any commercial purpose. So if we have defined the purpose of rent or purpose of usage, then the lessee is bound to use the asset according to the terms of the agreement. In case he violates this contract, for example, as I gave you the example of the house, that the house was given for residential purpose and the lessee start using it for commercial purpose. If the owner find this violation of the contract, in that case he can cancel the contract. Okay, next is, if any damage to the asset is caused due to the negligence or misuse by the lessee, he is liable to compensate the lessor for this loss. So if the loss to the asset is due to negligence or misuse, right? You have to note down these two things, that if the loss to the asset is because of the negligence of the lessee, or if it is misused by the lessee, then in that case, the lessee is liable to compensate the lessor for this loss. Okay, the next point is, the lessor shall carry the risk related to asset throughout the leased period. As we discussed this point earlier as well, that the owner is not transferring the ownership, he is only transferring the right of usage. ठीक है, तो जब वो सिर्फ उसको right of usage दे रहा है, then in that case he will be carrying the risk related to the asset, ownership related, like the asset is the property of the owner. So in that case, he will be carrying the risk. I'll give you an example here. For example, if you if someone has a commercial property and he rent it out to another person, and that commercial property is in a small shopping center, for example, and if due to any mishap, for example, there can be earthquake, and because of the earthquake that whole shopping center is destroyed. So if the and among in which this shop is also destroyed, this commercial property is also destroyed. So that then in this case, because this loss is due to the natural calamity, so the owner will have to suffer the loss in this case. A joint property owned by two or more person can also be leased out. Sometimes this happens. Okay, there are more than one owner of a property. So in that case, that property can be leased, but that can only be leased by the mutual consent of all the owners. Another thing is that the rent that will be coming of against that joint property, that rent will also be shared by all the co-owners of that property. Okay, so again, the point is related to the uh, a joint property, a property in which there are more than one owner. A joint owner of a property can lease his proportionate share to his co-partner only and not to any third party. Okay, so the point here is that if a property is owned by one more, like let's say a property is owned by two people. Now, one of them wants to use it. In that case, uh, he the other party can agree to it, that okay, you can use the entire property, but in that case, the person who is using the entire property, he has to pay the rent to his co-partner. It is necessary for a valid lease that the leased asset is fully identified by the parties. So in a lease agreement, the property should specifically be mentioned. As you can see in the example here, A said to B, I lease you one of my two shops. B agreed. Now, the lease is not valid unless the leased shop is clearly determined and identified. So you get an idea here, what is happening, that a person is making this contract that I lease you one of my two shops. Which shops? Which shop? It is not clearly defined in this contract. So since the property is not identified, it is not clearly defined in the contract, this contract will be considered to be invalid contract. Determination of rentals. Uh, we have already discussed this point that once you are making a contract of Ijarah, you have to determine the rent for the entire period. The rent must be determined at the time of contract for the whole period of lease. So even if you are making a contract for 100-year or 99 years lease, you have to specify the rent for the entire period. It is permissible to charge different amounts of rent for different phases of a lease agreement. For example, most of the time we find this clause in the lease agreements that the initial rent is a certain amount, say 50,000 per month, and then there will be an increase of 10% per year for the next 10 years. Now this will be this contract will be considered to be a valid contract because the time period is defined 10 years, as well as the rental for the entire period are also mentioned in the contract. However, if you consider the second example where we are saying that the rent for the first year is 10,000 or 50,000 per month, whereas rent for subsequent years will be determined by the lessor. Now, this second case is not a valid lease agreement. Why? Because the rents are not defined. You're making contract for 10 years, you're defining rent for the first year, but for the future period or for the remaining period, you're saying that the rent will be determined by the lessor, which are not defined in the contract. So this second case, remember, is not a valid lease agreement. The lessor cannot increase the rent unilaterally, and any agreement to this is void, right? So because the time period was already decided in the contract, the rents were also defined. So in that case, the lessor cannot increase the rent unilaterally. Unilaterally means at his own. So he cannot do that. He has to go by the contract. Okay, so determination of rentals. The lease period shall commence from the date on which the leased asset has been delivered, no matter if the lessee has started using it or not. This is an important point that a contract was made for the lease, and then the owner handed over the asset to the client. And for example, you can take the example of a house where a contract was made. Then the keys of the house were handed over to the client. Uh, the client shifted late in that property. Maybe he shifted after 2 months. Even if he has shifted in that property after 2 months, he received the keys earlier, so he's liable to make the payment of those 2 months as rent. This is an important point that rent starts once you have delivered the asset to the lessee. The lessor has delivered the asset to the lessee. From that date, the lessee becomes liable for the payment of rentals, whether he uses the asset or not. Okay, in case of lease agreements, we find this thing that most of the time you have to pay some advance. So the rent or any part can be paid in advance, which shall be adjusted towards the rent after it becomes due. So it is possible that you pay maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months rent in advance, and then that will be adjusted in the future period. Okay, next point is if the leased asset has totally lost its utility or purpose for which it was leased and no repair is possible, the lease shall terminate on the day on which such loss has been caused. Okay, um, the lease is ड्यू टू द यूटिलिटी ऑफ द एसेट ठीक है व्हाई आप क्यों उसका रेंट पे कर रहे हैं क्यों आप उसके अगेंस्ट पेमेंट कर रहे हैं बिकॉज यू वांट टू यूज दैट प्रॉपर्टी बट इन केस that asset is damaged or it is not in a condition in which it can be used, so the contract of lease will be cancelled from that date. Again, as I gave you the example before that you rented out a commercial property in a shopping center, and that center somehow was damaged or destroyed in an earthquake. So the lessee is not liable to make rental payments फ्रॉम द डेट दैट प्रॉपर्टी वाज डिस्ट्रॉयड। ठीक है, जिस डेट को वो प्रॉपर्टी डिस्ट्रॉय हो गई, ऑब्वियसली यूजेबल नहीं है, लेसी उसको यूज नहीं कर रहा, तो उस केस के अंदर फिर लेसी जो है वो रेंट के लिए लायबल नहीं होगा। ओके, द कमेंसमेंट ऑफ लीज। The correct way according to Sharia is that the rent be charged after the lessee has taken delivery of the asset and not from the day the price has been fixed. If the supplier has delayed the delivery after receiving the full price, the lessee shall not be liable for the rent of of the period of delay. Again, you can take the example of a house here that a person rented out his house and made a contract in which it is specified that the rent the lessee is liable to make rent from let's say from 1st of January 2020. Um, the contract was signed, but the lesser was not able to deliver the asset on due date, like before the 1st of January, maybe due to some repairs, or maybe he was going through some work, some um, repairs in the house, or some other changes that he was making to the property, which took a little bit more time. And let's say this property was handed over to the client on 1st of Feb. The contract, the date was mentioned 1st January, but it was handed over late. It was handed over on 1st of February. In that case, the lessee is not liable to pay the rent for the month of January. ठीक है ना, समझ आ गई बात कि भाई उसके पास तो वो प्रॉपर्टी हैंड ओवर ही लेट हुई है, तो जब उसको प्रॉपर्टी लेट हैंड ओवर हुई है तो फिर वो उस केस के अंदर ही इज नॉट लायबल टू मेक द रेंट टू पे द रेंट फॉर दैट पीरियड। ओके जी, लेट्स मूव ऑन। Different relations of the parties. Okay, to understand this point, I'll give you an example, and that example will help you understand this point. For car ijara, Islamic banks, they have two options. The one of the option is that you can go for a brand new car, 0 meter car, and the second option is that you can also um, lease get on lease from a used car from the Islamic bank. ठीक है, ये दो दो तरह की वो आपको सर्विस, दो तरह की ऑफर आपको दे रहे हैं। एक ऑफर में ये है कि जी आप एक ब्रांड न्यू कार निकलवा लें बैंक से लीज के ऊपर, और दूसरी ऑप्शन ये है कि जी आप यूज्ड कार मार्केट से खरीद लें। अच्छा, अगर आप दूसरी ऑप्शन के साथ जाते हैं, आप कहते हैं कि जी मुझे एक यूज्ड कार जो है वो लीज आउट करनी है, तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक कि जी वो गाड़ी किसने सिलेक्ट करनी है? हु इज गोइंग टू फाइंड द कार फॉर यू? यस, ऑब्वियसली इट इज योर जॉब। ठीक है, आपने खुद गाड़ी सिलेक्ट करनी है, पसंद करनी है कि ये गाड़ी है जो मेरी रिक्वायरमेंट के हिसाब से है, मेरी नीड के हिसाब से है। तो आप once you have selected the car, you will inform the bank कि this is the car that I want to get on lease. Now what the bank is going to do, the bank is going to negotiate the price with the party who is offering this car. ठीक है, the bank has the staff for this purpose. They will make evaluation of of the value of the car according to the market rate, और negotiate उस market rate के हिसाब से वो उसके साथ negotiate करेंगे, and then this car will be purchased by the bank. ठीक है, the ownership of the car will be transferred to the bank. Registration of the car will now be in the name of the bank. Once the bank has purchased this car, now bank will offer this car to the client on rent. So now you understand, it will be a two-step process कि पहले आपने गाड़ी जो है वो पसंद की, आपने गाड़ी पसंद करके बैंक को इन्फॉर्म किया, बैंक ने उसको इवेलुएट किया और निगोशिएट किया, उसके बाद the bank purchased that vehicle, and the ownership of the vehicle was transferred in the name of the bank, and then bank gave this vehicle on rent to the client. So this is how now you can understand I'll explain this slide कि जी किस तरह से ये link हो रहा है. If the client has been entrusted with the purchase of the asset intended to be leased, there are two separate relations between the institution and the client. ठीक है, ये वो जो अभी मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दी है कि जिसमें आप यूज्ड गाड़ी लेना चाह रहे हैं, तो यूज्ड गाड़ी जो है उस केस के अंदर it is your job to find out the car of your choice. So now, once you are looking for the car and you have selected a car and informed the bank, okay, this is the car that you need. Now, all this you are doing as an agent, purchasing asset on behalf of the lessor. Why we are calling you an as an agent here? क्योंकि अभी तो गाड़ी जो है वो आपने पसंद करके बैंक को बताई है, तो that car will be purchased by the bank. सो बैंक विल बी प्रिंसिपल इन दैट केस, ठीक है ना, गाड़ी जो है बैंक के नाम पे है तो बैंक उस केस में प्रिंसिपल होगा, एंड यू आर एक्टिंग एज एन एजेंट ऑफ द बैंक. नाउ once the car is purchased, then the second contract will come into play in which the bank will give this car to the client on rent. Now here you will become lessee. So when the client takes the delivery from the supplier or from the bank, when the client will take the possession of the car from the bank, he will be considered to lessee. Till the time asset is not delivered to the client, he is not liable to discharge his obligation as lessee. ये point हम पहले भी discuss कर चुके हैं कि जी कोई you are not liable to pay any rent before the delivery of the asset. ठीक है? Once you have received the ownership and possession, sorry, not ownership. Once you have received the possession, delivery of the asset, from that date onward you are liable to make the payment of the rent. ठीक हो गया जी, क्लियर हो गया. तो ये जो डिफरेंट रिलेशंस हैं, देयर आर टू डिफरेंट रिलेशन, वन इज एजेंट एंड द अदर इज दैट ऑफ लेसी. Agent is once you are, you help or you find the car of your choice and inform the bank for purchase. That is your role as an agent. And lessee, when the bank will give you that car after purchasing that car, when the bank will deliver that car to you, you will become the lessee. Let's move on to the next slide. As soon as the client takes the delivery of the asset, the lease will automatically start on that date without any additional procedure. We have already made the contract, and in that contract, all the things have been, settled between the two parties. So once you receive the delivery of the asset, from that date onward, the this contract of lease will become applicable. Okay, next is, in leasing, the asset remain under the risk of and ownership of the lessor throughout the leasing period. If the lease period begins right from the time when the client has taken delivery, it does not violate the principle mentioned above. What will happen that the bank is going to give you that car on rent for a period decided between the two parties. वो पीरियड आमतौर से इट कैन बी 3 years, इट कैन बी 5 years, जो भी आपका कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में टाइम पीरियड डिफाइन हुआ है. ड्यूरिंग दिस होल पीरियड द बैंक विल बी द ओनरशिप ऑफ द ओनर ऑफ द एसेट. ठीक है, ओनरशिप जो है बैंक ने आपको नहीं दी है, बैंक ने सिर्फ आपको गाड़ी जो है वो रेंट पे इस्तेमाल करने के लिए दी है. और ऑब्वियसली इस पूरे पीरियड के अंदर यू हैव टू डिस्चार्ज योर लायबिलिटी एज लेसी एंड द बैंक विल बी लायबल एज लेसर. जो कि हमने पहले लेसर और लेसी की लायबिलिटीज डिस्कस की हैं कि जी ओनरशिप रिलेटेड जितने भी एक्सपेंसेस होंगे दे विल बी द लायबिलिटी ऑफ द बैंक, और यूजेज रिलेटेड जितनी भी लायबिलिटीज होंगी इस केस के अंदर, जैसे गाड़ी में पेट्रोल डालना है, उसका ऑयल चेंज करना है और उसकी जो मेंटेनेंस है, तो वो सारी आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होगी. The same point is explained here that as the lessor is the owner, in this case bank, of is the owner of the asset, and he has purchased it from the supplier through his agent, he is liable to pay all the expenses incurred in the process of its purchase and its import to the country of the lessor. Okay, ये भी पॉसिबिलिटी है कि जी आप इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं एक एसेट, तो अगर आप इंपोर्ट कर रहे हैं इन दैट केस उसके ऊपर इंपोर्ट के ऊपर जितने भी उसके खर्चात आएंगे वो सारे भी बैंक को पे करने होंगे. जैसे हम गाड़ियों के केस के अंदर देखते हैं कि इफ़ यू गेट अ कार ऑन लीज, से यू आर लोकेटेड इन इस्लामाबाद, एंड now we know that the production facility of most of the cars in Karachi, so you have to transport that vehicle from Karachi to Islamabad. तो वो जो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन की कॉस्ट आती है, that is the bank is supposed to pay that cost. ठीक है, इसी तरह से once the car is there with the bank, as per law of the country, the car is to be registered in the name of bank, तो उसकी रजिस्ट्रेशन करवानी पड़ेगी. वो जो रजिस्ट्रेशन की कॉस्ट आएगी, that is also the responsibility of the bank. ठीक है. अच्छा, अब यानी परचेज के जितने भी एक्सपेंडिचर हो गए, उस एसेट की ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के जितने भी एक्सपेंडिचर हो गए, दे आर ऑल द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द एसेट of the lessor. However, the lessor can include all the expenses in his cost and can take them into consideration while fixing the rentals. But as a matter of principle, he is liable to bear all those expenses as the owner of the asset. अच्छा, ये पॉइंट जरा समझ लें कि देखें, जब आप फॉर एग्जांपल हम एक लम्हे के लिए इफ वी टेक लीजिंग आउट ऑफ our discussion, for example, you are purchasing an asset for your factory. So what will happen? You have to pay to the supplier, then you have to pay the transportation cost, then you might have to incur some cost of installation of that machinery. You might have to get insurance of that vehicle, of that machinery. Now, all these costs that you are incurring, they will all be added up to show the cost of the asset. ठीक है, जो आप अपनी बुक्स के अंदर, बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स के अंदर वो जो कॉस्ट शो करेंगे एसेट की, उसके अंदर ये सारी कॉस्ट शामिल होती हैं. आई होप यू हैव कवर्ड दिस पॉइंट इन योर अकाउंटिंग कोर्स कि जब अकाउंटिंग के अंदर आप एसेट्स की वैल्यू शो करते हैं बैलेंस शीट के अंदर, तो उन एसेट्स की वैल्यू के अंदर ये सारी कॉस्ट ऐड होकर वो उसकी कॉस्ट बनती हैं. तो सेम थिंग इज देयर कि जब बैंक ने अपनी कॉस्ट कैलकुलेट करनी है कि ये गाड़ी उनको कितने में पड़ी है, तो ऑब्वियसली दे हैव टू ऐड ऑल द कॉस्ट्स अप. So once they have by adding up all these cost, they will figure out the cost कि जी टोटल कॉस्ट इतनी हमें पड़ी, इतने की हमें गाड़ी पड़ी. यानी जो फैक्ट्री रेट है ऑफ द कार कैन बी लेट्स से 2 मिलियन. ठीक है, 20 लाख की गाड़ी है जो कि आपको फैक्ट्री से मिल रही है. अब इसके ऊपर आपने लेट्स से ट्रांसपोर्टेशन 50,000 आपने ट्रांसपोर्टेशन इनकर कर दी. फिर आपके पास जब ये गाड़ी पहुंच गई तो इसकी रजिस्ट्रेशन के ऊपर अनदर 50,000 इज इंकर्ड, तो ये 2.1 मिलियन यानी 21 लाख हो गए. और फिर इसकी इंश्योरेंस है, वो भी आप इसमें ऐड कर सकते हैं. तो ये सारी चीजें ऐड करने के बाद आप जब क्लाइंट को बेचेंगे ये गाड़ी, तो आप अपनी प्राइस जो प्रॉफिट है वो इसके ऊपर चार्ज करेंगे. यानी ये तो कॉस्ट हो गई, इसके ऊपर जो आप चार्ज करेंगे वो आपका प्रॉफिट होगा, या इन केस ऑफ लीजिंग इसके ऊपर जो है वो आप अपना रेंट चार्ज करेंगे. ओके जी, लेट्स सी. लाइबिलिटी ऑफ द पार्टीज इन केस ऑफ लॉस ऑफ द एसेट. ये पॉइंट हमने वी हैव ऑलरेडी कवर्ड दिस पॉइंट कि जी if the loss to the asset is caused due to misuse or negligence, then it is the responsibility of the lessee. ठीक है, अगर आपने घर, if you have taken a house on rent and the window is broken by the child, or if any other wear and tear is there in the house, then you are responsible for that. You have to, you know, um, rectify or whatever damage is there, you have to compensate for that. If the loss happens to the asset without misuse or negligence, then it will be considered the loss of the lessor. The lessor is liable for that loss, not the lessee. So these are the liabilities of the parties in case of loss of the asset. Okay, again, this point was touched upon before in the previous slides as well. The variable rentals can be there in long-term lease. Long-term lease, as I mentioned earlier, in Pakistan, we also have lease for 99 years. So it's a long-term lease, even 10 year, 15 year, 20 years. So whatever time period is there, in means if it is more than long-term period, if it is more than 1 year, we can say it is a long-term period. In long-term lease agreements, it is mostly not in the benefit of the lessor to fix one amount of rent for the whole period of lease. जैसे मैंने आपको कहा कि जी आप 99 ईयर्स पे अपनी लीज पे अपनी प्रॉपर्टी दे रहे हैं, तो आप कहते हैं जी 10,000 पर मंथ रेंट होगा. तो अब फॉर 99 ईयर्स 10,000 पर मंथ इज नॉट जस्टिफाइड. ठीक है ना, वो रैशनल नहीं होगा. तो कैसे इसको हम हैंडल करेंगे? देयर आर टू ऑप्शंस फॉर द लेसर. First of all, he can contract the lease with the condition that the rent shall be increased according to a specified proportion. For example, 5% after a specified period, say 1 year. ठीक है, तो आमतौर से जनरली हमें जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स मिलते हैं उसके अंदर इसी तरह से कॉन्ट्रैक्ट हमें मिलता है कि जो ओनर होता है वो क्या करता है, वो अपना एक इनिशियल रेंट डिटरमिन करता है और देन ही स्पेसिफाई कि देयर विल बी अ सर्टेन इंक्रीज इन दैट रेंट per month or per year, whatever is the specified period is there in the contract. The second option is he can contract lease for a shorter period, after which the parties can renew the lease at new terms and by mutual consent. So this second option is basically don't go for a long-term contract. You can go for small contracts. Let's say you make a contract for 3 years, and then you specify that after 3 years we'll make a new contract depending upon the situation at that time. Uh, out of these two options, option number one is more suitable for the lessee. ठीक है जी, लेसी को ज़्यादा इसमें क्लैरिटी है कि उसके पास एक लॉन्ग टर्म पीरियड के लिए एसेट आ गया है और उसको उस पीरियड का रेंट भी पता है. सिचुएशन नंबर टू इज नॉट सुटेबल फॉर द लेसी. कि अगर 3 साल, लेट्स से यू मेड अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फॉर 3 years एंड यू सेड कि जी आफ्टर 3 years वी विल रिन्यू द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट. अब 3 साल के बाद क्या होगा, दैट इज नॉट क्लियर टू द लेसी, तो वो लेसी के इंटरेस्ट में नहीं है. सो डिपेंडिंग अपॉन द सिचुएशन कि किस, जब आप आपस में कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बना रहे हैं तो कहाँ पे आप किस एग्रीमेंट पे आप दोनों एग्री कर जाते हैं, यू कैन मेक दैट एग्रीमेंट. Okay, this is one of the point which is a little bit controversial as well. Why? Because in Islamic Sharia, this is penalty for late payment rent. Like you have made a contract that, let's say, you have given a property on rent to other party. The other party is supposed to pay the rent by a specific time. What if that party fails to make payment by that time? ठीक है, तो उस केस में फिर हम क्या कर सकते हैं? तो एज पर शरिया तो आप, you cannot charge anything extra other than the rent you have defined in the contract. Okay, so a monetary charge from a debtor for his late payment is exactly the riba prohibited by the Holy Quran. If you recall the definition of riba is any excess charge from the debtor. Any amount, if you are giving something on loan and then you are charging extra amount on that, that is riba. ठीक है जी, हम पहले रिबा के चैप्टर में डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. तो अगर इस पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से देखें तो लेसर कैन नॉट चार्ज एन एडिशनल अमाउंट इन केस द लेसी डिलेज द पेमेंट ऑफ द रेंट. अच्छा, ये तो बात हो गई. लेकिन अगर हम बैंकिंग कॉन्टेक्स्ट के अंदर देखें कि हम कहते हैं कि जी बैंक ने गाड़ी दी है क्लाइंट को, एक को नहीं, बैंक हैज हंड्रेड्स ऑफ क्लाइंट्स, ठीक है, जिनको उन्होंने वो अपनी प्रॉपर्टी, दे हैव रेंटेड आउट द व्हीकल्स. ठीक है, अब ये सारे के सारे हंड्रेड थाउजेंड्स में हैं जो उनके क्लाइंट्स हैं, वो अगर टाइम पे ना करें तो व्हाट विल हैपन? सो दिस विल जेपरडाइज द होल बैंकिंग सिस्टम. ठीक है, आपका बैंकिंग का पूरा सिस्टम ही नहीं चल सकेगा. यू कैन नॉट वर्क आउट, यू कैन नॉट प्लान योर कैश फ्लोज. ठीक है, आपको पता ही नहीं है कि जी हमें कब पेमेंट रिसीव होगी. क्लाइंट माइट डिले फॉर 1 month, वी माइट डिले फॉर 2 month. और इन अ सिनेरियो कि जहाँ पे क्लाइंट को कुछ एक्स्ट्रा भी पे नहीं करना पड़ रहा, तो यू कैन ऑलवेज एक्सपेक्ट कि जी यू विल नॉट गेट पेमेंट ऑन टाइम. ठीक है, तो चूंकि अब ये सिचुएशन वो होगी जिसमें बैंकिंग सिस्टम ही कोलैप्स कर जाएगा. ठीक है, सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस द इस्लामिक स्कॉलर्स, now this is a practical problem which was discussed by this before with the Islamic scholars, that how we can handle this situation. ठीक है, if we say कि okay there will be no extra amount charge, uh, banking system cannot work in that case. So uh, an administrative solution for that, which was given by the Islamic scholars, is that okay, what you can do is you can charge a penalty. You can specify a penalty in the contract that if the payment is not paid by a specific due date, the client will have to pay this much extra, and whatever you are charging this that extra amount, it will be spent in charity. ठीक है, यानी ये इसी तरह से जैसे आप देखें यूटिलिटी बिल्स हमारे आते हैं, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बिल आता है, उस पर लिखा होता है कि जी पेएबल बाय ड्यू डेट इज से 2500 एंड पेएबल आफ्टर ड्यू डेट इट इज 2700। ठीक है, वो पेनल्टी उन्होंने वहां पे बिल में डिफाइन की होती है। अब उस पेनल्टी का इफेक्ट ये आता है कि लोग ट्राई करते हैं कि जी उस ड्यू डेट से पहले पे कर दें, अगर पे नहीं करेंगे तो उनको ये 200 एक्स्ट्रा पे करना पड़ेगा। तो सेम थिंग इज हेयर कि जी बैंक्स जो हैं जब ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बनाते हैं इजारा का, उसके अंदर वो स्पेसिफाई कर देते हैं कि जी दिस इज द अमाउंट विच इज पेएबल बाय ड्यू डेट। ठीक है, सर्टेन अमाउंट इज पेएबल बाय ड्यू डेट। अब इफ यू फेल टू पे दैट अमाउंट बाय दैट ड्यू डेट देन यू हैव टू पे सर्टेन एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट, वो आपको पेनल्टी उसके ऊपर एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट पे करनी पड़ेगी। तो दैट इज व्हाट that this is the concept of penalty for late payment कि जो आप एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट ले, अच्छा नाउ दिस एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट ऑल्दो इट कैन बी चार्ज्ड, एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट तो आप चार्ज कर रहे हैं, बैंक उस पे एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट पे चार्ज कर रहा है, लेकिन वो उसको चैरिटी में यूज करेगा। सो दिस इज व्हाट इज स्पेसिफाइड हियर that in that case, as I gave you the example of banks, the lessee may be asked to undertake that if he fails to pay the rent on its due date, he will pay a certain amount to a charity। ठीक है, उसको उस केस के अंदर फिर उसको ये एक्स्ट्रा अमाउंट पे करनी पड़ेगी जो कि बैंक आगे चैरिटी के अंदर यूज करेगा। टर्मिनेशन ऑफ लीज, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ लीज की हम बात कर रहे हैं कि हाउ इट कैन बी टर्मिनेटेड। इजारा इज बेसिकली अ बाइंडिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मीनिंग दैट वंस एग्जीक्यूटेड इट कैन नॉट बी रिवोक्ड यूनिलैटरली। बाइंडिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है मतलब ये कि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दोनों पार्टीज को इसको फुलफिल करना है। So once you have signed this contract and the asset is delivered to the client, it cannot be cancelled. Revoked means it cannot be cancelled. Unilateral means one-sided. So whoever is going is whoever wants to break this contract, he has to pay the damages to the other party. If the lessee contravenes any term of the agreement, the lessor has a right to terminate the lease contract unilaterally. ठीक है, अगर ये लस्सी जो है वो वायलेशन करता है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट की, उसको जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट की जो कंडीशंस थी, टर्म्स एंड कंडीशंस, वो उसको फुलफिल नहीं कर रहा, इन दैट केस द लेसर हैज अ राइट कि वो उस कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को यूनिलैटरली टर्मिनेट कर दे। However, if there is no violation on the part of the lessee, the lease cannot be terminated without mutual consent, as mentioned, as we discussed in the point number one. If the leased asset is damaged to the extent that it is no more able to give usufruct is right of usage, the contract of ijara is terminated। ठीक है ना, हमने वी डिस्कस्ड अर्लियर कि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट क्या है इजारा का। कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ये है कि आप अपना एक एसेट यूज करने के लिए किसी को दे रहे हैं। अब अगर वो एसेट ही यूजेबल ना हो, डैमेज हो जाए, ठीक है, उसकी यूटिलिटी खत्म हो जाए, तो एज सुन एज द एसेट लूजेज इट्स यूटिलिटी, दैट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बिकम्स दैट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट इज टर्मिनेटेड। ठीक हो गया जी। तो ये हमने टर्मिनेशन ऑफ लीज में बात कर ली कि जी एक तो पहली बात ये कि कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बाइंडिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है, लेकिन अगर जो है दूसरी बात ये कि अगर लेसी इसको वायलेट करता है कोई भी टर्म्स एंड कंडीशन को, उस केस में लेसर इसको टर्मिनेट कर सकता है कॉन्ट्रैक्ट को। और तीसरी बात ये है कि जी अगर एसेट जो है वो कंप्लीटली डैमेज हो जाए तो उस केस के अंदर भी आपका ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट जो है वो टर्मिनेट हो जाएगा। Okay, if the lessee stops using the asset without the lessor's consent, accrual of the rental will continue। अच्छा, अब ये हमने पहले भी बात की थी, इफ के एसेट जो है वो क्लाइंट के डिस्पोजल पे, लेसी के डिस्पोजल पे है, ठीक है, उसको वो एसेट हैंड ओवर हो चुका है, वो अब उसको यूज करता है या नहीं करता, इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ दैट ही हैज टू पे द रेंट। ठीक। If the sold asset is if the sold asset is sold to the lessee, the ijara contract is terminated due to the transfer of ownership to him। Okay, ये पॉइंट ये कि जी वो जो एसेट आपने उसको दिया हुआ था, रेंट पे दिया हुआ था, अब आप उसको वो आपसे खरीद लेता है एसेट। ठीक है, अगर वो एसेट खरीद लेता है तो उस पॉइंट उस फ्रॉम दैट डेट ऑनवर्ड ही इज नॉट लायबल टू पे फॉर द रेंट, क्योंकि वो तो अब उसकी प्रॉपर्टी हो गई है। The traditional jurists differed regarding the termination of lease due to death of any of the parties, that is, the lessor or the lessee. But contemporary jurists have come to the conclusion that an ijara contract is not terminated with death of either party. However, the heirs of the lessee can terminate if they feel that the contract has become too onerous of their resources to pay the rental. ठीक है, ये जो कंटेम्प्रेरी जूरिस्ट हैं उनके हिसाब से। अब यहाँ पे एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन स्पेसिफाई की गई है ए ऑफी के नाम से, AAOIFI। दिस ए ऑफी स्टैंड्स फॉर, A stands for accounting, then second A stands for auditing. Accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institutions. AOFI is abbreviation for accounting and auditing organization for Islamic financial institutions. This is basically a regulatory body, or you can say it is a standardizing body which is working on the standardization of Islamic banking. So according to that organization, the contract of इजारा is not terminated with the death of lesser or lessee. ठीक है जी, तो ये भी इसमें एक पॉइंट आ गया। नेक्स्ट इज इफ द lessee has paid rental for any stipulated period in advance and he's obliged to return the asset because of any compelling circumstances, which is called force majeure, the remaining of the advance rental must be returned to the lessee because the lease will be considered to have been dissolved for a valid reason. Okay, so if any कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ लीज वाज साइन, ठीक है जी, वो एसेट लेसी को हैंड ओवर हो गया, लेसी यूज कर रहा है, उसका रेंट पे कर रहा है, बट समथिंग है, सम ड्यूरिंग द कोर्स, यू नो, सम सिचुएशन अराइज जो कि किसी के कंट्रोल के अंदर नहीं है, ठीक है, विच इज बियॉन्ड द कंट्रोल ऑफ द लेसर और लेसी, और उस केस के अंदर वो लेसी जो है वो अपनी अनएबिलिटी का इजहार करता है कि ही इज नॉट एबल टू कंटिन्यू बिकॉज ऑफ दैट unavoidable circumstances and he wants to terminate the contract. तो उस केस के अंदर अगर उसने कुछ, इफ द लेसर एग्री कर जाता है कि जी ठीक है, ही फाइंड आउट कि यार वाकई इट इज अ जेन्युइन केस एंड इट इज द लेसी हैज नो अदर ऑप्शन, सो इन दैट केस if the contract is terminated, the remainder of the rental must be returned to the lessee. Okay, another rule is regarding the insurance of the asset. Um, although the Muslim jurists have certain reservations with respect to the concept of interest, with the concept of interest as well as the concept of insurance. Now, the issue of interest was resolved by implementing it through Islamic banking. ठीक है, जो इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के अंदर जो इंटरेस्ट का एलिमेंट था उसको इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के थ्रू, जो कन्वेंशनल बैंकिंग में इंटरेस्ट का एलिमेंट था उसको इस्लामिक बैंकिंग के थ्रू रिजॉल्व किया गया। इसी तरीके से इंश्योरेंस के अंदर जो ऑब्जेक्शनेबल चीजें थी, जिससे मुस्लिम ज्यूरिस्ट का, मुस्लिम स्कॉलर्स का जिसके साथ जो है वो दे हैव सर्टेन इश्यूज, तो उनको रिजॉल्व किया गया थ्रू इंश्योरेंस, थ्रू तकाफुल. So if the now takaful is an alternative to insurance, Islamic alternative और Sharia compliant alternative. ठीक है, तो जिस तरह से इस्लामिक बैंकिंग जो है वो कन्वेंशनल बैंकिंग का ऑल्टरनेटिव है, तकाफुल जो है वो कन्वेंशनल इंश्योरेंस का ऑल्टरनेटिव है। फिलहाल आप इतना समझ लें, इसको मजीद डिटेल से हम आगे, हमारा पूरा चैप्टर है तकाफुल पे, उस पर डिस्कस करेंगे कि भाई डिफरेंस क्या है दोनों के अंदर, बट फॉर नाउ यू कैन जस्ट you know just keep this in mind कि takaful is an alternative of insurance which is allowed by Sharia or the Islamic scholars. If the leased property is insured under the Islamic mode of takaful, it should be at the expense of the lessor and not at the expense of the lessee, as is generally provided in the agreement of the current financial leases. ठीक है, अगर आप लीज की, फाइनेंशियल लीज की बात करते हैं, तो फाइनेंशियल लीज के अंदर इंश्योरेंस इज द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द लेसी। लेकिन अगर हम अगर हम जो है वो इजारा की बात करें, तो इजारा इज अ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ लीज विच इज गवर्न्ड बाय द इस्लामिक प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ इस्लामिक शरिया। तो उसके हिसाब से इस्लामिक शरिया के प्रिंसिपल्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से लेसर इज रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर पेमेंट ऑफ इंश्योरेंस, नॉट द लेसी। सो इफ द lesser wants to get insurance or takaful, he has to pay for that, not the lessee. Okay, the residual value of the leased asset. इसको थोड़ा सा आप इस तरह से समझ लें, एक एग्जांपल से समझ लें कि आपने, लेट्स से एक क्लाइंट था, उसने गाड़ी बैंक से ली और वो गाड़ी उसने 3 इयर्स के इजारा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट पे ली थी। अब ये 3 इयर्स में वो जो पेमेंट कर रहा है उसके अंदर वो उसका रेंट भी पे कर रहा है और गाड़ी की कॉस्ट भी पे कर रहा है। So at the end of 3 years, what will happen that the client would have paid the full amount of the cost of the car as well as he would have paid the rent of that car। ठीक है, दोनों चीजें वो पे कर चुका है। तो what is the residual value? अब क्या बच गया उसमें? What extra amount he has to pay? The leased asset is generally transferred to the lessee at the end of the lease, free of any charge or at a nominal price। ठीक है, वो बात हो गई कि उसने 3 साल जो अपनी जो मंथली इंस्टॉलमेंट्स पे कर रहा था उसके अंदर उसने कॉस्ट भी पे कर दिया और रेंट भी पे कर दिया। तो जब अब आपने उसको एसेट की, क्योंकि वो पूरी कॉस्ट पे कर चुका है, तो यू नीड द बैंक हैज ट्रांसफर द ओनरशिप ऑफ दैट कार टू द क्लाइंट। तो वो क्या करेगा? इट विल बी ट्रांसफर्ड ईदर फ्री ऑफ चार्ज और एट अ नॉमिनल प्राइस। आपको नॉमिनल प्राइस भी रखी जा सकती है कि जी लेट से 3 साल के बाद वो क्लाइंट हैज टू पे 20,000 या 50,000, वट एवर सम नॉमिनल प्राइस इज देयर, he has to pay that and to get the ownership of the car। In order to ensure that the asset will be transferred to the lessee, sometimes the lease contract has express clause to that effect। अच्छा, एज पर रूल्स ऑफ शरिया, वो आगे हम अभी डिस्कस भी कर लेंगे, अगली स्लाइड्स में भी आने वाले हैं कि जी जब आप कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बनाते हैं इजारा का तो यू मेक अ सेपरेट कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ इजारा। एंड इजारा कॉन्ट्रैक्ट तो सिर्फ ये है कि हमने गाड़ी, बैंक ने गाड़ी आपको रेंट पे दी हुई है, जबकि आप जो पेमेंट कर रहे हैं उसमें कॉस्ट भी पे कर रहे हैं। तो बेसिकली आप ये चाह रहे हैं कि उसकी ओनरशिप भी आपको मिल जाए। तो ये जो आपको ओनरशिप मिलनी है, इट इज नॉट स्पेसिफाइड इन द कॉन्ट्रैक्ट ऑफ इजारा। उसके लिए बैंक आपको एक अलग से डॉक्यूमेंट बना के देगा जिसमें वो मेंशन करेगा कि जी आप इसकी जो कॉस्ट कॉस्ट पूरी पे कर देंगे तो ट्रांसफर हम, ये इसकी ओनरशिप हम आपको ट्रांसफर कर देंगे। सो so express clause to that effect is not there in the contract of ijara। The ijara, the agreement of ijara itself should not contain a condition of gift or sale at the end of the lease period। ठीक है, तो इजारा में आप ये चीजें नहीं मेंशन कर सकते। इजारा तो रेंट की बात है कि अभी हमने गाड़ी दी है, इस पे हम आपसे इतना रेंट पर मंथ चार्ज करेंगे। रह गई बात कि जी उसकी ओनरशिप आपको कैसे मिलेगी एसेट्स की, उसके लिए बैंक आपको अलग से एक प्रॉमिस टू सेल का डॉक्यूमेंट बना के दे रहा है जिसके अंदर वो ये सारी चीजें बताए। अच्छा जी, अब लीजिंग के अंदर एक कॉन्सेप्ट आता है सब लीजिंग का कि इफ यू हैव obtained an asset on lease and you want to sublease it, you want to lease it to another party। So what is the ruling of sharia with respect to that? if the lessor permits the lessee if the lessor permits the lessee for subleasing, he may sublease it। ठीक है, अगर यानी लेसर कैन sublease an asset only with the permission of the lessor। If the rent claimed from the sublessee is equal to or less than the original, then the rent payable to the owner or original lessor, all the schools of Islamic jurisprudence are unanimous on the permissibility of sublease। अच्छा जी, यहाँ पे आप दो पॉइंट समझ लें सब लीजिंग के हवाले से। नंबर वन, सब लीजिंग हो सकती है या नहीं हो सकती? सब लीजिंग हो सकती है बट विद द परमिशन ऑफ लेसर। एक पॉइंट तो ये हो गया। दूसरा पॉइंट ये हो गया कि सब लीज का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, सब लीज का जो रेंट है, कैन इट बी ग्रेटर देन द ओरिजिनल रेंट? So there is difference of opinion. According to some scholars, it can be greater than the original rent, and according to the opinion of some scholars, it cannot be। But if you are getting a rent equal to or less than the original contract, it is unanimously allowed by all the scholars। According to the contemporary Sharia scholars, the viewpoint of Shafi and Hanbali schools is preferable, meaning that leased asset can be subleased regardless of the amount of rental। ओके, ये जो मैंने बात की थी कि जी रेंट ऑफ सब लीज जो है वो कितना होना चाहिए, क्या शुड इट बी equal or less than the original lease contract, or can it be higher than the original lease contract? In that, the opinion of the two scholars, Shafi school and Hanbali school, according to them, sublease contract can be made with the permission of the lessor, irrespective of the amount of rental। Yani according to them, you can charge any amount of rent. It can be greater, even it can be greater than the rent charged in the original contract। अच्छा जी, सिक्योरिटी और गारंटी इन इजारा। And as Ijara creates a debt in the form of payable rental, the lessor can demand security and a guarantee from the lessee. Okay. So normally in banking, we find this thing. Bank normally wants to secure their investment, so they ask for the security, or sometimes they ask for the guarantee. So this can be done in case contract of Ijara. Taking security is also permissible for the reason that the leased asset is handed over to the client as a trustee, and he is required to protect the asset in his fiduciary capacity. Normally, in case of house financing or in case of automobile financing, bank don't need security. Why? Because the house is in the name, the ownership of the house is in the name of the bank. The ownership of the vehicle or car is in the name of the bank. It is registered in the name of the bank. So even if the client stop payment, uh, the property's ownership is with the bank. So bank can recover the amount from the sale of that property. So in that case, the investment is quite secured. Signing of lease. Okay, I'll try to explain this point bilingually. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा मैं आपको उर्दू में ही समझा देता हूँ ताकि आपको ये समझ आ जाए साइनिंग ऑफ लीज का कॉन्सेप्ट क्या है। फॉर एग्जांपल, आपने अपना एसेट किसी को लीज पे दिया हुआ है और उसका आपको रेंट आ रहा है पर मंथ। अब आप ये चाहते हैं कि यार वो जो पर मंथ रेंट मुझे आ रहा है, मैं वो डोनेट करना चाहता हूँ, किसी ऑर्फन हाउस को देना चाहता हूँ, किसी में चैरिटी हॉस्पिटल को डोनेट करना चाहता हूँ, या फिर आपकी कोई डिपेंडेंट है, ठीक है, कोई आपकी फैमिली है, फैमिली मेंबर है, कोई आपका रिलेटिव है, इवन कोई आपका जो है दोस्त है, वो आप पे डिपेंडेंट है और आप ये चाहते हैं कि यार ये रेंट जो है ना वो मैं उसको असाइन कर दूं, यानी इंस्टेड ऑफ दैट कमिंग इन माय अकाउंट, इट इज गोइंग अकाउंट ऑफ अ थर्ड पार्टी, जो कि मैंने आपको एग्जांपल्स दिए उनमें से कोई भी हो सकती है। तो असाइनिंग ऑफ रेंट इस असाइनिंग ऑफ लीज का मतलब ये है कि वो जो रेंटल्स हैं वो आप किसी थर्ड पार्टी को असाइन कर रहे हैं। अच्छा, अब इसमें the lessor can sell the lease property to a third party whereby the relation of the lessor and lessee shall be established between the owner and the lessee. अच्छा, ये तो खैर अलग पॉइंट है कि जी आपने लेसर ने अपना पॉइंट, जो लेसर था उसने अपना एसेट बेच दिया, ठीक है, किसी दूसरी पार्टी को, और जिस पार्टी ने खरीदा है वो अब आपके साथ नया कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बना सकती है वही एसेट, यानी बेसिकली लेसर चेंज हो गया है, बट वो एसेट आपको ही रेंट पे दिया हुआ है, तो फिर उसके लिए कॉन्ट्रैक्ट चेंज हो जाएगा, लेसर का उसमें से नाम चेंज हो जाएगा। दैट कैन बी डन। असाइनमेंट की जो मैंने बात की, साइनिंग ऑफ लीज जो है वो परमिसेबल किस केस के अंदर है, जो मैंने आपको एग्जांपल्स दी, इफ यू आर इट इज यूज्ड फॉर चैरिटेबल पर्पस, ठीक है, साइन करना चाहते हैं, और टू हेल्प समवन, जैसे मैंने कहा कोई फैमिली मेंबर जो आप पे डिपेंडेंट है या कोई दोस्त आप पे डिपेंडेंट है, तो उस केस के अंदर आप उसको कर सकते हैं। लेकिन अगर आप वो असाइनिंग ऑफ लीज विदाउट असाइनिंग द ओनरशिप इन द लीज एसेट फॉर अ मॉनेटरी कंसिडरेशन इज नॉट परमिसिबल, यानी आपने कहा था कि यार वो मैंने किसी से लोन लिया और वो लोन अब मैंने वापस करना है, तो वो लोन मैं इस रेंट की अमाउंट से वापस करता हूँ, लेकिन वो अमाउंट ऑफ रेंट इज ग्रेटर देन द अमाउंट ऑफ लोन, तो फिर ये इंटरेस्ट हो जाएगा, फिर ये अलाउ नहीं होगा। ठीक है, उसी की यहाँ पे एग्जांपल इस स्लाइड में दी हुई है कि लेसर कैन असाइन हिज राइट टू क्लेम रेंट फ्रॉम द लेसी टू हिज सन और टू हिज फ्रेंड इन द फॉर्म ऑफ गिफ्ट व्हिच इज परमिसिबल। इफ द लेसर वांट्स टू सेल हिज राइट फॉर अ फिक्स्ड प्राइस इट इज नॉट परमिसिबल बिकॉज इट इज इन दिस केस मनी इज सोल्ड फॉर मनी। ठीक है, तो पैसे को इट कैन नॉट बी assigning of lease cannot be against a monetary consideration. Okay जी, नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इज सिक्योरिटाइजेशन ऑफ इजारा। अच्छा, ये थोड़ा सा आप समझ लें सिक्योरिटाइजेशन का कॉन्सेप्ट क्या है। कि सिक्योरिटाइजेशन, सिक्योरिटीज आर बेसिकली नेगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स, ठीक है, जिसमें आपके पास शेयर्स और बॉन्ड्स आते हैं। जस्ट कंसिडर द केस ऑफ शेयर्स। तो व्हाट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ शेयर्स इज दैट यू परचेज द शेयर ऑफ अ कंपनी, ठीक है। परचेजिंग ऑफ शेयर मीन्स यू आर इन्वेस्टिंग इन दैट कंपनी and you have acquired a portion of ownership in that company. अच्छा, अब आपने जब शेयर खरीद लिए तो आपकी इन्वेस्टमेंट हो गई। एज एन ओनर यू आर इंटाइटल्ड फॉर द डिविडेंड और यू आर एंटाइटल फॉर द शेयर इन द प्रॉफिट, वो आपको उसमें से कंपनी के, जिस कंपनी में आपने वो पैसा इन्वेस्ट किया है उसके प्रॉफिट में से आपको शेयर मिलता रहेगा। और ये नेगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट है, मतलब ये कि अगर आप इसको बेचना चाहें, अपने शेयर को किसी दूसरी पार्टी को शिफ्ट करना चाहें, तो आप ये शेयर स्टॉक मार्केट में बेच के दूसरी पार्टी को शिफ्ट कर सकते हैं। सो दिस इज द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ सिक्योरिटी। अच्छा, अब क्या इजारा के अगेंस्ट हम इस तरह की कोई सिक्योरिटी इंस्ट्रूमेंट, इसके अगेंस्ट कोई क्या हम निगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट इशू कर सकते हैं? सो द आंसर इज यस, कि इजारा के केस के अंदर हम, इट कैन बी सिक्योरिटाइज्ड, इसको हम किसी इजारा को हम बैक कर सकते हैं थ्रू सम निगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट। इसकी मैं आपको एग्जांपल देता हूँ, दैट एग्जांपल विल मेक द कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर। फॉर एग्जांपल, योर कंपनी is interested in making a huge construction, huge shopping mall, like just like the case of Centaurus or maybe Giga Mall, right? So it's a huge investment, and for that, instead of borrowing from the bank or from any financial institution, आप कहते हैं कि यार हम इसके अगेंस्ट इजारा सर्टिफिकेट्स लॉन्च करते हैं, negotiable instruments बनाते हैं कि the amount that is required for completion of that project will be covered by the sale of these इजारा certificates. इजारा certificates public को बेचेंगे, people will purchase those certificates, ठीक है, और फिर उसके बाद वो जो certificates हैं, जो लोग खरीदेंगे, they have obtained a portion of ownership in that project. So being a part of that project, once this project is completed, आप वो सारी shops, वो commercial property है जो आप rent पे आगे लगा देते हैं, अब वो जो rent आ रहा है आपके पास, that rent is divided among all those people who have invested in this project, ठीक है। तो this is a source of earning for the investors, ठीक है, उनको उसके ऊपर रिटर्न आता रहेगा उस इन्वेस्टमेंट के ऊपर। और ये एक निगोशिएबल इंस्ट्रूमेंट भी है, बिकॉज इफ यू वांट टू सेल इट, ठीक है, आप किसी दूसरी आपको पैसों की जरूरत पड़ गई, आप बेचना चाहते हैं, यू कैन सेल इट टू थर्ड पार्टी और आप अपना पैसा भी उसमें से रिकवर कर सकते हैं। तो सिक्योरिटाइजेशन ऑफ इजारा इज पॉसिबल इन दैट केस। नाउ लेट्स गो ओवर द कंटेंट ऑफ दिस स्लाइड। Ijara certificates can be issued which will represent the holder's proportionate ownership in the leased asset and will assume the rights and obligations of the owner lesser to that extent. Each one of the holders of this certificate will have a right to enjoy a part of the rent according to his proportionate share in the asset. जैसे मैंने आपको एग्जांपल दी है कि वो जो बड़ा शॉपिंग कॉम्प्लेक्स बन गया, उसकी शॉप्स जो हैं वो आपने रेंट पे दे दी, उसका जो रेंट आ रहा है वो सारा का सारा टोटल अमाउंट जो आ रही है, दैट विल बी डिवाइडेड अमंग दीज इजारा सर्टिफिकेट होल्डर्स. Similarly, he will also assume the obligations of the lessor to the extent of his ownership. In the case of total destruction of the asset, he will suffer the loss to the extent of his ownership. तो चूंकि you are the owner, those people who have purchased these ijara certificates, they will be considered to be the owner of this project. If God forbid this project is destroyed, so what will happen, that the investment of all the investors, all those people who have purchased or invested in this project, they will all, the investment of all those people will be, uh, it will go in waste. Okay, another concept that is there in Ijara is concept of head leasing. This concept of head leasing is developed in the modern leasing business. In this arrangement, a lessee subleases the property to a number of sublessees. Then he invites other to participate in his business by making them share the rentals received by his sublessees. For making them participate in receiving rentals, he charges a specified amount from them. Okay, so head lease means one party, he has uh, taken different units of a property on lease, then he's subleasing them to other parties. Those parties who are getting them on sublease, they are further subleasing it. So it's a complete network of lease headed by this party. This arrangement is not in accordance with the principles of Sharia. The reason being a lessee does not own the property. He is entitled to benefit from its usufruct only. So here you can see a complete network of subleasing is going on, whereas all of these different levels of subleasing are there, and in these different levels of subleasing, uh, all of them, since they are not the owner, they cannot further sublet this property, and this whole arrangement is basically not in accordance with the principles of Sharia. Okay, Ji, so with this, we come to the end of our today's presentation, and uh, I hope you'll be able to understand. Basically, what we covered in today's lecture were all the rules and regulations related to the Ijarah in general, and wherever possible I gave you an idea. मैंने उसमें आपको साथ साथ उसके भी बताता गया हूँ कि जो है वो किस तरीके से इजारा जो है वो यूज हो सकता है बैंकिंग के अंदर. So that is the end of today's lecture, and I'll request all of you to go through these slides. ठीक है? I'll also be sharing with you that the lecture notes for this topic. Go through these slides, listen to the lecture, then see the notes that I'll be sharing with you. उनको भी जरा आप एक दफा देख लें, और उसके बाद आपको उसमें जो भी any queries or any problems uh, you have, you can contact me through email, या आप मुझे even जो है वो WhatsApp कर सकते हैं कि जी any concept, any point which is not clear to you. So with this, we come to the conclusion of today's session. I hope you enjoy this session. Uh, you have the recording available. You can, listen whenever at your own convenience. Go through these slides. और आई विल रिक्वेस्ट यू ऑल्सो कि जी वो आपके पास जो नोट्स हैं उनको भी ज़रूर इसमें देख लें. उसमें एग्जांपल्स भी दी हुई हैं, तो जहाँ पे आपको कंफ्यूजन आता है लेक्चर में, कंसल्ट योर नोट्स. ठीक है, नोट से अगर आपकी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो जाती है, वेल एंड फाइन. इवन स्टिल देयर इज सम इशू or some question in your mind, you're more than welcome to uh, ask using email or WhatsApp. Thank you very much for today. See you in the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.